Hi, I'm Adam Bryant. I'm author of the new book from Harvard Review Press called The Leap to Leader, How Ambitious Managers Make the Leap to Leadership. And I'm going to be talking with Dove about why reluctant leaders often make the very best leaders. We'll be talking about why you need to wrestle with the question, who are you as a leader, and what your 3 core values are for leadership. And we're also going to be talking about our theories for why there are so many bad leaders in the world still today.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. I am your host, Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. And on that subject, I have a special announcement for you. My brand new course has just been released. It's on Coursify X. It's titled Creating a Culture of Belonging. God, do we need that right now politically? We need to come together. The course is separated out into 8 sections and that are going to take you by the hand and walk you through exactly what you need to do to create a culture of belonging. Because creating a culture of belonging maximizes your personal and corporate success. Get ready to strap on the tanks and dive in deep into what it takes to create a culture of belonging inside of your organization. Curious to know more? Simply go to coursifyx.com/belonging. coursifyx.com/belonging. All right, on today's show, are you ready to leap into being a leader? You know, managers versus leaders, the gap is widening. The question is, are you ready to bridge that gap? The research is clear. Your organization wants you to step up into being a leader, but what's also clear is that most companies don't offer even any kind of leadership training until somebody's been in a leadership role for about 10 or 15 years. And oftentimes that means you're embedded in your own bad habits. So we're going to talk about what it takes to make the leap to leader, how to go from being an ambitious leader to ambitious manager rather, to making that jump to leadership. What are the practical strategies and tactics to build a loyal following and broaden your impact? Well, from my point of view, we got to do a lot of self-excavation in order to go there. You got to find out what's driving you. Do you know how to do that? Do you know how to find and grind out your own organization strategies in a meaningful, purpose-driven way? If you've suddenly made that leap to leader, do you have the mindset shifts critical to leading others effectively? Well, that's where we're going in the next 2 episodes as we walk you through taking the leap to leader. More on that in a moment. However, before we jump in, we always need your help. So please, do us a favor, help us stay relevant. Go over to wherever you're tuning into the podcast from, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You may have been a loyal listener for many, many years. Have you subscribed? Have you written a review? It really helps. All those things are really helpful. If you are a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. All right, let's dive back into it. In the world of leadership, there's always been a lot of talk about climbing that corporate ladder. But let me ask you, do you believe that there's a way to go from being that ambitious manager to being an outstanding leader? I ask because everyone in leadership will tell you there's a vast difference between managers and people who are leading them. Well, our guest today is here to share exactly what it takes to make that leap to leader. His name is Adam Bryant. Adam joined the XCO Group as a senior leadership development executive mentoring firm as the managing director back in 2017 after 30 years as a career journalist. including 18 years at the New York Times as the creator of the iconic Corner Office column. Adam Bryant has interviewed more than 1,000 CEOs and other senior leaders over a dozen years, and his focus for those conversations has been on the key leadership lessons learned rather than asking them about their company strategies. You want to know what they knew, what they learned. For all those insights and information he got really informed the books that he's written, and he works with this leadership development company. He's written 4 books based on the themes learned from those interviews, including his latest one, which is The Leap to Leader, How Ambitious Managers Make the Jump to Leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me to welcome returning champion, Adam Bryant.
Hey, Dov, how are you? Thank you so much for the invitation. Always enjoy our conversations.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure and honor to have you on. I love having our combos. You are very insightful, man. You've done a lot of really powerful research. And, I really like that you come at it from the journalistic point of view, meaning there's got to be some sort of level of objectivity that I don't think is usually there when people are sort of sharing their playbooks for here's what you do. It's flavored by whatever biases that may be unconscious. And as a journalist, you've had to sort of put that aside, and I appreciate that. And that's why that's really important to me. I want to dive into it, but I want to start with our question, because you heard me talk about meaning, and I think that meaning I know research is very clear that meaning is what drives human beings. So what's the origin story of what's given your life meaning? Could be very recent, it could be ancient, but it's likely shifted. What is that?
Yeah, the reason I got involved in leadership space, if I go way upstream, I think it goes back to my days playing a lot of sports as a kid. And I was always fascinated by the different styles, the different coaches I had, right? There's some sort of yellers and waving their arms, and other people are very quiet. When I would watch sports as a kid, I'd be intrigued by, the coaches on the sidelines, again, very different styles.
Yeah.
So that's probably where it started. Then in my mid-20s, I was put in charge of a team of 7 people, my first management role. 2 of those people wanted the job, were old enough to be my father. And in those couple of years, I discovered firsthand how hard managing people is. I probably made every mistake in the book. I probably invented a few. And that really sort of sharpened my appreciation for, wow, like this is really hard. And from there, what ultimately led to this sort of chapter of my involvement in leadership space is that sort of the what if question that launched the Corner Office series that I started at the New York Times, which is what if I sat down with CEOs and never asked them about their companies, and instead asked them about leadership lessons they've learned and how they think about the universal challenges of leadership. So that's been kind of the arc in terms of what gives me purpose. I mean, to me,
what is that origin story for you that, it's the meaning. It's like, this is why I am doing what I'm doing in my life.
Yes. And the way I would answer that, if you give me a magic wand and say, okay, you got 3 wishes, the things I would get rid of: inequality, racism, and bad bosses. Like, those are the 3 big things. And maybe the first 2 are obvious, but I think there are way too many bad bosses in the world. I think the toxic effect of bad bosses is something that we don't always appreciate. And I think the thing that gets me out of bed, if I can have like fewer bad bosses and help leaders become better leaders, help good managers become great managers, just making that small contribution at the margins, to me, that's a good day.
I'm just going to put on my journalistic hat. And so from that point of view, as an origin story of your meaning, were you that bad boss, or did you have one that was like, that left a bad taste? Like what, because I know that what gives our life meaning is usually an emotional impact. There was something that, wow.
Yeah. And look, I've had my share of horrible bosses over the years, and I know how they made me feel, and I'm sure they made a lot of other people feel the same way. And I just thought, what I've always been struck by, like, how much of a difference a good boss versus a bad boss makes. Like a good boss, a good leader, they can, raise an entire organization, a team, get everybody to accomplish more than they thought they could. Bad boss will create a lot of stress for individuals, depress the performance. They've taken down broader organizations. So that, like, swing of good boss to bad boss is so huge at a personal level, team level, organization level. And that's why I think leadership is incredibly hard. It's incredibly subtle, but it's just incredibly important, because nothing great in our society happens without good leadership.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So the book title is The Leap to Leader. So from a very practical point of view, what does that mean? Because it's like, okay, but what does it mean for me, the reader, to go, oh, okay, what's the practical meaning for somebody?
Yeah, and I really focus a lot on the mindset shift. So to me, the Leap to Leader is not about the title on your business card. It really is a mindset shift. And there are things that you need to do at a sort of tactical, external level. I often sort of categorize the leadership game like it's the external stuff, setting strategy and everything that you need to do. But just as important as all the internal work that you need to do in terms of leadership. And that's a big part of the focus of the book. And so, some of the sort of provocations that I put to the reader is like, what to you is the difference between being a leader and being a manager? I've got some thoughts on that. The first section of the book is called, Do You Really Want to Lead? And the word really is italicized for a reason, because I think a lot of people just say, yeah, I want that job, without really pausing to find out, like, what are their motivations for wanting it? Because a lot of people just say, like, yeah, I want that top job. Yeah, I want that big promotion. And they get into the job and they go, I had no idea it was this hard. Like, all this stuff I was good at, I'm not doing anymore. And my day is just like endless people problems and putting out fires. And so there's this sense of, I just ask people to be incredibly clear-eyed as much as you can. Find out what those jobs are like day to day, just what the experience of those jobs is, and be very clear about your motivations. And if your motivation is like, you want power, you want more money, it's like, okay, but those probably aren't going to get you through the tough spots. And another big question I think people really need to wrestle with is the simple answer to the question. It's not a simple answer, but it is a simple question. Who are you as a leader?
Mm.
And the context for me is that I think people, especially early in their career, they're always told, have your elevator pitch ready, Dov. Like, you gotta have your elevator pitch. And to me, that means one of two things typically. If somebody asks you, CEO in the elevator asks you, what are you working on? You got to have like your quick answer. Or what do you want to do here? That's the second elevator pitch. Mm. And in all our work with senior leaders, what I've come to appreciate is that people don't spend enough time thinking about how they would answer the question, who are you as a leader? And I would say you will probably go through your entire career and nobody will ever ask you that question, but you're going to be a lot better off if you know the answer. I think it will help with calm, confidence, your executive presence, and which then leads the question, okay, so what does a good answer sound like, right? Well, what are you supposed to say? And what I always encourage people when I'm working with senior leaders is figure out, like, what are the three values that are really important to you personally? And it's not enough to just come up with the words or phrases, those three things. You have to bring them to life and make them real. So what are the values? Why are they important to you? Tell me the story of how they became important to you. Yeah. And then tell me about, like, what does that look like in practice? How would I experience that working with you day to day? And I think if you really wrestle with that question, come up with an authentic answer, again, that's going to make you a better leader. So all of that is part of, to me, the internal sort of excavation work that you have to do to make that leap to leader.
Yeah, I think those are excellent points, because as I said, it's all about meaning. And so very often in our work, when we talk about values of people, who say, well, this is my value. Well, what does it mean? Well, you know what it means. Yeah, I know what it means to me, but I don't know what it means to you. That's incredibly different. And I don't think we take the time. I think that in this rush to go from manager to leader, it is about the prestige. It is about the status. It is about the power and maybe the salary bump and all those kinds of things. But if you've not done that personal excavation, if you've not dug into yourself first, it's very easy to get into that role and feel either overwhelmed or go on a big power trip. So when you've asked those questions, because you've done all these amazing interviews, when you've asked those questions, what is the real reason people want to be a leader? I mean, because I'm sure there's an awakening. Sometimes they realize, the real reason I want to be a leader is because I wanted a corner office and I wanted power. But there's another reason. What is that? What did you find?
Yeah, and I think the reason a lot of people don't wrestle with the question is use the metaphor of like sort of the river that just carries people along. And so I think there's a couple of rivers. One is the river of the company itself. Like when big companies sit down and start doing succession planning and who's the high potential and leadership development, they start putting like names and faces in boxes and stuff. There's an assumption in that whole process. Well, of course you would want to move up, right? Like all these people that we are choosing as high potentials and future leaders, of course they would want to move up. And not everybody does. A lot of people are very happy being individual contributors. And so I think a lot of companies need to pause and have the conversation, say, we're thinking about you for these roles. Do you really want that role? So that's one river that, again, just sort of sheer momentum carries people into those jobs.
Well, and that for a minute, because I think people have to pay attention to that. Because we live in a certainly U.S. driven, even if you don't live in the U.S., mentality, which is that you should be ambitious and you should want the next step. And a lot of people feel guilty that they actually no, I like my life. It's good. And really what I'm hearing from you here, Adam, is to, instead of getting swept along by that river, is to step off onto the banks for a minute and go, do I even want to be carried down this direction? Because it's almost like there's an assumption that you do want that. And you're asking people to pause and actually go, well, hold on a sec. Do I? If it means I'm going to be less available for my kids or my partner or the mitzvahs or weddings or funerals and, whatever it might be, that might be exactly what you have to do. But on the other hand, you might be going, that's not my value system. So I really appreciate that you're actually asking people to stop that there.
Yeah, and I like your metaphor, like step off the river, like stand on the banks for a bit. And it's okay if you want to get back on the river, but at least do the introspection. And I really like reluctant leaders, right? Like there's some people like, of course I want that job. And it's like other people go, I'm not sure. It's like, I really like that people aren't sure because it means they respect the enormity of the responsibility and the privilege of managing people. So I really, admire reluctant leaders. So again, that's one river that sort of that carries people along. The second one you touched on, which I think is just kind of the broader societal pressures, right? Like, of course you want more status, you want more money, you want a bigger title, you want a bigger office. All those status markers, I think they become really important to a lot of people. And they just go, well, of course I want that. But I keep going back to like kids these days, like do so much research on which college they're going to go to, right? You got to go to the college tour and see 10 places. Like, do you think this is going to be a good fit, Dove? And like, how do you feel about how you feel today, Dove, about this particular, like we do all this research to go to a college. And yet people go like, I want that job without really doing research. Like, what is that job like day to day? Like, what do you like about this job? What don't you like about this job? Because you shouldn't get into these big jobs. Like, you can't know what a job is like until you step into it, but you can be, as much as you can, clear-eyed about what you're getting into. And you shouldn't get into those jobs and go, man, like I had no idea. I had no idea that my day was going to get chewed up with people problems and all the work that I was planning to do at work, I can't do at work and I need to do in the morning and at night, because that's what those big leadership jobs are. And so, and also your internal motivations, like, is it status? like more money? Because the money bump, that wears off pretty quick. Everybody wants more money, but like the psychological bump of having that is going to wear off. Power doesn't really play in our society anymore. And to me, look, there's no right answer, but I really think you should lead because you want to lift people's lives and the organization and the team and have a positive impact and just sort of help everything and everybody grow. Like that should be your motivation.
I can clearly remember when I talk to people about being, that I'm here on the planet to serve and I want to serve as a leader. And so how can I serve you from a leadership position? And people thought I was nuts, and then became the Servant Leadership Institute and all that movement, which is wonderful. And even then it was still a bit, it's very Christian and blah, blah, blah. But I think you're absolutely right, Adam. I think that it's become a lot like our politics in that it's very divided. You're either the old school dinosaur command and control leader or you're in service. That's it. Right? And if you can't be in service, you're going to get thrown into those command and control roles and you might end up not liking you very much as a result of doing that. And so that, that's why I'm really liking this thing about questioning yourself. What is this really about? For me is so important.
Yeah. And I would also sort of double click on the servant leadership, because one of the ways I like to sort of break that down, because nothing's 100%, right? So
no.
The framework that I like to think about sort of leaders and their motivation is that everybody's a pie chart of like two things. The question is like, what's the proportions? The two sections of the pie are selflessness and, self-centered, right? There are things, we're all a mix of those things that we're doing for ourselves, our families, our personal ambitions, but there's also things that we're doing for others. Yeah. And it's never 100% selflessness, right? But you should be clear about like, have some self-awareness and like, what is my pie chart? Because if it's mostly self-centered, that means like, you're not going to get the followership, right? Because we've all worked for bosses and I have too, maybe you have in your career, Doug, but it's like, they're just seeing you as one of their employees as what you can do for them, right? You're just sort of a tool to help them achieve their goals. Yeah. And we can all feel that at a gut level, and it really erodes trust. It reduces followership. So again, these is kind of self-assessments that I think people should do.
I said at the opening that every leader will tell you there's a vast difference between a manager and a leader. What did your research with these 1,000 leaders, what did it reveal to you about the real difference between a manager and a leader is? So not just the hyperbole that's thrown around, but what was like the meat and potatoes, the nuts and bolts of what was the clear distinction between the two, managers and leaders?
We could talk about this for hours, and I think there are a lot of differences. The one I keep coming back to is that I think if you're a manager, your boss probably is giving you some project or projects plural, and there is a little bit of an expected outcome already, right? Mm-hmm. This is what we need you to do. We're giving you resources, time, people, money, etc. But we kind of know what we need you to do. And that's the manager's mindset. I think the leader's mindset is to, first of all, be a very good manager, right? You got to nail the core job and nail those outcomes. But I think it's that sort of that top spin. It's like, okay, I'm doing what you asked me to do, but I'm also trying to figure out how to transform my role. I'm figuring out how to transform my team's contribution. And I'm scanning the organization up, down, sideways, outside the company, the industry, saying, what do we need to do that we're not doing? What can I take off my boss's plate to help them? What are the problems that my bosses have that they don't even see that I can help them with? What's the new initiative that we need to do? So to me, that leader mindset is like constant transformation, always searching for opportunities, things that go above and beyond your job description. And with that comes some courage, right? Like to be able to step up and maybe say to your bosses, like, there's a problem you guys have. You guys don't see it. I'm raising my hand. I'm going to try and take this on, but there's this issue over here where there's this amazing opportunity. I know it's a bit of a bet. It's a bit of a long shot, but I believe in my gut that this will work. So give me the resources and I'll make that happen. So to me, like, that's the core distinction between being a leader and mindset, if I had to reduce it down to one thing.
So it's this willingness to certainly step beyond the role, whatever my role is as the manager. But again, in service of something, whether that's service of a bigger vision that you're seeing that is maybe not seen, or even of a solution that may or may not be being seen. Because I think that a lot of, well, bad leaders often approach these things with the mindset of, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. So we just suck it up and, just suck it up and get on with it. And I think that great leaders go, it's just the way it is, has been accepted. But what if that's not fixed? And I think when a manager approaches with that, they're really showing that more than interest, but a compulsion to serve at this bigger picture level.
Yeah. And I have found in my work with leaders, and I'm sure you do too in yours, but I've been surprised the degree to which people are comfortable pointing their fingers up, even at very senior levels in organizations. It's like, well, we're getting mixed messages from the bosses. So like, I don't know, once they figure out what to do, then we'll do it. And these are senior leaders. And sometimes in those contexts, we're saying, you are them. Well, you understand that, right? You're talking about them, but you are them. You are the leadership of the company. And you need to own this. The other sort of simple framework that I talk about is it's where I think about, and to me, it's also really relevant to why managing people is becoming so much harder right now, is that I think managers, the distinction of management and leadership, managers sort of execute pre-existing playbooks.
Yes.
Leaders write new playbooks. And I think the challenge for so many managers right now in companies is the playbooks don't work anymore, right? Like this is a new environment. And so many managers are having to have conversations for which they don't have the experience, the resources, the tools, all the balancing acts. I mean, just being a manager today is like 5 to 10 times harder. It's like, how am I supposed to be both compassionate? We're all dealing with stuff at home. You want flexibility, but I'm also got these messages about return to office, and I'm trying to drive accountability while being compassionate. How am I supposed to do that? Mental health and well-being is now a very open conversation, which is great. But how do you have that conversation? And so I think that's why so many managers need to step up to be leaders, because a lot of managers right now are saying, tell me how to have this conversation. Give me the template, give me the worksheet, because I don't know how to do it. And a lot of companies are saying to them, it's like, we can give you some guidelines, but there's no playbook, there's no template anymore. So we need you to embrace this challenge rather than just sort of throwing your hands up.
Right. So in the book, you're not saying do this. You're saying, what would you do? And even if the person comes up with what they would do, I want to talk more about in the practicality of it in part 2 of the show. But even if they come up with a playbook, I mean, of course they're going to go, I don't know if this is going to work. So I want to talk about how they test that out and because we've got to get to the practicality of this for everybody, because the whole mindset thing can very quickly go down the toilet with, well, I'm just not that kind of person, or they won't listen to me. We want to talk about the practicality of how to put these things in place and work them through as we go into part 2 of the show. We're already at the end of part 1 of the show. And so I'd love for you, Adam, to tell people where they can find out more about you, about this wonderful new book, and all the fabulous resources.
No, I appreciate it. So my personal website is adambryantbooks.com, books plural. And my firm is the XCO Group, and our website is XCO Leadership, excoleadership.com.
And we will make sure, of course, that those things are all published in the show notes so you can see them if you didn't catch it. Any of this stuff, we'll make sure it's all right there for you so you can just click. We're going to be back for part 2 of the delicious conversation with Adam Bryant about making that leap to leadership. in just one click. Before we do that, I want you to remember to ask yourself the question, do you really want to be a leader? Or did you allow yourself to get pushed into something that you actually never considered, never even thought about? Because too often in our lives, we are running positions, not just in leadership, but in everything, because somebody said we should, or because societally put pressure on us. And if you're a miserable individual, maybe you're just not following your path and you bought into something. So we started out this conversation with a very important question, which is, do you really, underline really, want to be a leader? And before you click on part 2 of the show, just one click away, ask yourself that question. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious. We're going to be back in just one click with part 2 of our delicious conversation with Adam Bryant. See you soon.